Welcome to Ideaspring's Founder in Focus podcast series. Today I'll be talking to Bharath from Phyx44, phenomenal company trying to do something very innovative in the protein space. So Bharath, welcome to Ideaspring's Founder in Focus podcast series, and great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
We'd love to, generally have a discussion on your journey of having founded Phyx44, what motivated you to do that, and then your plans for taking forward this company and specifically impact your product is going to have on the health of human beings in general, because I know that has been one of your key thoughts in creating this company. So before, let's start with the very first question on why Phyx44. What made you start Phyx44? Because you are from engineering background, and suddenly you have completely metamorphosed or moved to a biotech or synthetic biology. So let's start from there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe I think uh, I can start by talking a little bit about what I did earlier and segue into what I'm working on now to help you better make better sense of what is it that I'm doing and why am I doing it in the first place. So like you said, my background is very different. The greater part of the last decade or so before I started this company, I've been in product lead roles at consumer internet technology businesses. The last one being at Google. Before that, I was at Amazon. Before that, I was at an ed tech company. Before that, I was the founder of an ed tech company. So um, it's no surprise that when you see what I'm doing right now, it's a far cry from all of these things. And the simple reason why I started something in this space is because I've always wanted to do something in climate sustainability and impact space, so to speak. And when I was at Google, I took a sabbatical to try and figure out what I want to do next. And when I looked at all the avenues where I could do some meaningful work in the climate sustainability and impact space, the usual suspects came up, right? So if in popular culture, if you ask an average individual about what needs to be done to fix climate, more often than not, they'd say, you put enough EVs on the road, you put enough solar panels, you put enough windmills out there, you've solved the climate problem or you've solved the sustainability problem. That's not true. That is far from the truth. The reality is there are much harder problems like construction, cement, steel, and food, which is animal derived as well as plant derived food, has a significant impact on the planet in terms of land use, water use, and greenhouse gas emissions, as well as human health. Some of the food choices that we make are inherently unhealthy to the point that they are leading us to live relatively poor quality healthy lives, right? So that's something that attracted me. And specifically Phyx44, the reason I chose was three things came together for me in that. Firstly, I have a background in biochemistry. I graduated with a master's degree from IIT Kharagpur in industrial chemistry with specialization in biochemistry. It's something that I understood inherently when I learned about precision fermentation, when I learned about how you can make alternatives to food that you currently have, but in a healthier as well as a more sustainable manner. That was much easier for me to understand than something to do with battery tech or semiconductors, so to speak. And second reason was that the sheer amount of impact that was possible on climate, planet, as well as human health became evident to me the more and more I read about this. Um, Inherently water guzzling, inherently extreme high amount of carbon dioxide emissions, inherently very high land usage is a systemic problem of how we produce most of our food, whether it is animal derived or plant derived. And very little is being done in this regard from a technology point of view. So that is the second reason why I got attracted to it. So if I'm spending my time, it might to make it worth it, it has to be a big enough problem and the impact has to be substantial. That's the reason. The third is, as a consumer myself, I always felt that there is a need for better quality alternatives, whether it is dairy, whether it is sugar, whether it is anything that you get from your current sources. There should be a better way of going about producing it. And as a consumer, I felt that there is a need. And hence I said, okay, I wanted to start a company that tries to solve all of these problems. Identified dairy as our starting point, and then from there we moved on from dairy to more interesting novel proteins that I speak about later during our chat as well. So that's the story of why I started Phyx.
Good, good. So you said human health and sustainability. Which of the two was more important, or you give equal weightage to both?
So to me, I think sustainability is slightly more important than human health because of the sheer reason that there are a lot of people working on human health, not so many working on sustainability. And the most urgent and imminent challenge that is facing humanity today, when you think about it, is an existential threat of climate change. So just for that reason, I would weigh climate and sustainability as a more important reason for doing this than just human health. Of course, human health and impact on positive health outcomes is a noble endeavor in and of itself. But I do believe that there are a lot of very talented young people who are working in that space, and that's why I would weigh this higher.
Right. So when you got going with Phyx44, initially you said dairy, right? You started off with that, but then you also now in the company we have evolved to sugar substitute, protein as a sugar substitute, right? So how did that journey come about? Is it because scientifically, or in the process of creating dairy whey proteins, you saw the evolution to sugar because the sweetness, or how did that emerge?
Yeah.
Because I'm really very interested on the sugar side of it, because of the issue that in India is a
Diabetic capital, right?
capital, right? So how did that evolve?
So actually the market forces in a way made us realize a few things which uh, which helped us evolve the way we are going about building a company. Right? So we started off with dairy proteins, we made whey protein. Like, I wouldn't say there are lots of companies, but there are a few other companies in the world as well who managed to make whey protein, but without the animal, using microbes through a technology called precision fermentation. And we did that. But once we did that and we started looking out into the market, what we realized is the consumer acceptance for a product is only going to be there when you hit the right cost structure. Okay. You can have a product that replaces whey protein, but if it is retailing at 4 times, 5 times higher price than the animal derived product, which is the whey from a cow or a buffalo, you have a very limited market. That forced us to think about whether this is the way we want to approach it. So that was the first realization. The second is, then we said, okay, if we do just whey, that is not enough. We have to make something better than whey. And we internally used to jokingly call it a whey plus plus strategy. So it's not enough just to do whey, we have to do whey plus plus. And then we started looking at, okay, if you have to do something better than whey, let's look at where all whey protein is used and then see if there is something that emerges from that. We started looking at whey protein, and you'll find it hard to believe, but once you start noticing it, it becomes evident to you that it's very hard to find a product where whey protein goes and sugar is not there. It's almost impossible to find one. Why? Because dairy and sugar almost kind of go together. Then we said, okay,
Milk and sugar, anything
any dessert, anything. You take desserts, you take yogurt, you take biscuits, cookies, confectionery, baking goods, beverages. Wherever there's dairy, there's sugar. That is the reason we said, okay, if we can combine these two into a single product, we can do two things. One is we can create a clear differentiator versus everyone else in the world, because we'll create our own IP in terms of a product and that no one else can ape. And second, we can address a real customer need, because customers are actually adding both of these things into their product. So the genesis of the idea was, okay, let's do something better than whey. Whey and sugar almost always go together. Then you also have this, can protein act as a sweetener or a sugar replacement trend also catching up? We said, okay, let's add both of them together. And thanks to my background in Google and some level of exposure to AlphaFold earlier, we pioneered sort of, in at least in Indian startup landscape, the use of AlphaFold to do a lot of protein folding studies where we created fusion proteins. A fusion protein is basically, think of it as two proteins, but they are made fused together. You are not fusing them later on, but actually this microbe makes them together. But to make a fused protein, you need to see if they assume a folded shape that gives them both the functionality. So you want the functionality of a whey protein and you want the functionality of the sweet peptide as well. Why? Whey protein will give you the whey protein functionalities in your product, whether it is a beverage or a dessert or a confectionery item. And the sweet protein will also goes and docks on the same receptor that sugar does on your tongue and triggers the response to brain saying that you are eating something sweet. But if the folding is off for whatever reason, it will not trigger that sweet response. So we modeled thousands of molecules using AlphaFold to find the ones that will actually function the way we want whey protein to function and sugar to function, narrowed it down to a few tens of them, engineered strains to make those proteins, and ended up discovering what we call SWEY. So that is the genesis of this thing. And the reason why it's one thing to say that, okay, this product is essential for us to survive in the market. It is another to say that we want to create a differentiation, but it is also in line with our health and climate aspirations. What we tend to forget is sugar from sugarcane is an extremely water intensive and a land intensive.
Paddy and sugar are the worst.
Is crazy. And especially in India. India is the largest producer. It's the cheapest sugar that you can find in the world, massive production. There are a lot of vested interests in continuation of the sugar industry, but we also know the downside of having sugar available ubiquitously and so cheap. We are the diabetes capital for a reason, right? So, and we are as a culture very obsessed with sweetness as well. Sweetness is equivalent to celebration. Sweetness is equivalent to goodness in life. If there is anything good that happens in your life, if you do a religious ceremony, if you do a birthday celebration, any celebration, you actually, and in fact, in a lot of households, you make something called panchamritam, if you're aware of it. It's actually a mix of dairy and sugar. Thing is, all the forms of dairy and sugar and all the sweets as well, right? So, in that sense, we are obsessed with sugar. Sugar is also, like dairy, a fairly water intensive and environmentally expensive product. If you can combine both of them, you actually address climate sustainability concerns by reducing land use, by reducing water use, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions by combination right now. So each kilogram of SWEY reduces land, water use, and greenhouse gas emissions of 1 kilogram of whey protein, as well as 200 kilograms of sugar, actually, because it is 200 times sweeter than sugar. So 1 kilogram does the same job as 1 kg of whey protein and 200 kilograms of sugar. So all of those combined, you are able to save land use, water use, and greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to that, by encouraging consumers to consume more of protein-based sweetener, you are also addressing the significant issue of human health. Right? So you are taking the
Most important. That's one of the.
So you're taking them away from sugar as well as other sugar alternatives that are not very healthy. So there are a lot of sugar alternatives today, non-protein sugar alternatives like erythritol, like aspartame, which are proven through studies to have negative health impacts even in healthy individuals, let alone elderly, let alone children, let alone pregnant women. Right. So in that sense, a sugar alternative that is better for you is actually a protein-based sugar.
Understood.
So that's the reason why.
What's been the most difficult part in your journey so far in this company, right? Is it discovery of the proteins, that is combination of milk and whey and sweet, or now once you have discovered it, engineering it and building it to scale? So where are you finding the challenges in the company?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked, because when we started, I thought the first part will be more difficult. Okay. But thanks to the systems that were available, although it was difficult, it took much lesser time than it is taking to scale up, to optimize, and to eventually get the cost structure right. I think that is where the crux of the company is. And that is where the crux of the company for most of the product companies is. So once you've identified, you've created, or you've imagined a product, and you've created a prototype, and you've tested it, and you know that it does the job that it is supposed to do. Now you have to take it to the customers. So for the customers, it's just a promise. Hey, here's a protein that is sweet and that has also got dairy taste. By the way, it is very good for you as well as good for the environment. The customer says, all of this is great, but how much does it cost? When can you supply? Is it approved? These are the main three questions that they will ask. I think the more difficult part and the longer journey is in the latter than in the former. The former part does afford us the differentiation factor. No one can make this product because we have patented it. But just because we have patented it and it is our IP doesn't mean that customer is going to buy it. The harder part, I think, is in getting it to the customer. Yeah.
So there are substitutes for milk that are reasonably healthy, right? And soy milk. And
Yes.
I don't think there's anything that is substitute for sugar that is considered quote unquote healthy, right? Because people say, in terms of, if you use sugar substitute, they say the effects are not as good. And anything that you use as a sugar substitute, it's not as good. So how do you see your product now impacting that aspect where, it's a protein, so it's obviously good for you, but how do you see that evolving market now?
So I think the way you would have to look at sugar alternatives is people are aware of sugar alternatives as not being very healthy, but in a cost benefit trade off, they say it's better than diabetes. So if you're talking about saccharin, sucralose, or aspartame or erythritol, where in case of erythritol and aspartame, there are several studies linking it to cardiovascular disease over a period of time for prolonged exposure, let's say. They still say it's better than diabetes today. So that sort of cost benefit analysis, consumers are
Lesser of the two evils.
yeah, lesser of the two, they are forced to make this because they don't have alternatives that do not have any negative impacts as such. That is where protein sweeteners have a significant upper hand. You're consuming protein, but your brain is telling you that it is sweet, your tongue is telling you that it is sweet, your gut is metabolizing it just like protein. It gets fully metabolized because whatever we made is actually already being consumed. It's 80% similar to whey protein, which is a milk protein that most of the people are consuming, and the sugar protein or the sugar peptide part is also from nature inspired. So humans have had a history of consuming this protein, at least in parts of Africa, for centuries, if not more. So in that sense, we know that it is safer for you because you can fully digest it. We know that it is safer for you because it does not throw your gut microbiome out of order, which some of these sugar substitutes do. So that way, I think it strengthens the proposition of a sugar alternative much beyond what the current alternatives are able to offer. That is where I think we have um, uh, the USP of our product has the ability to outpace and take away the market from the existing sugar alternatives.
So what's your vision or goal for the company? What would you feel good at 5 years, 10 years down the road in having accomplished something? What would that be?
Yeah, I see. I would measure the success of the company in terms of the very reason why I started the company, right? The impact on environment and impact on human health, and it'll simply come down to if we ship tons of product, what that means is we've taken away several tons worth of wastage of land, wastage of water in terms of water usage, several hundreds of hectares of thousands of hectares of land saved, and several tons of carbon dioxide equivalent reduced. In addition to that, how many people have been given a viable alternative to sugar so that they can continue to live happy, healthy lives
And eat our eats more
and continue to eat sweets? So, how many people have been able to get off sugar in a way? I would measure impact in this much more than what's the revenue of the company or what is the margin of the company. Of course, those are important survival metrics. They are important from a funding point of view. They're important from a company growth perspective. But the real way in which I would be happy in measuring outcome is through the impact, through environmental, which is land use reduction, water use reduction, carbon dioxide equivalent emissions reduction, and in terms of human health, how many diabetics have now been able to regularly consume sugar without further making their condition adverse, and so many people have been able to live healthy lives by continuing to consume sweet. I don't know, product.
We are very, very happy to be part of the journey of Phyx44, and I wish you all the luck, and I want to see this coming into fruition and, where people can eat sweets without thinking twice. I look forward to that day.
Thank you so much appreciated, and thanks for all of the support in our journey as well. We are really lucky to have you and your support.
Thanks, Bharath.